Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Monbiosis on COP26.tv. Now, the great irony, the cruel paradox of these climate talks is that the people whose voices need to be heard most, those on the front line of climate breakdown, are the ones who are heard least. While the people whose voices need to be heard least, the fossil fuel lobbyists and the governments which act on their behalf, they're the ones who are heard most. It's a topsy-turvy world, and we are trying to put it the right way up in our small way on COP26.tv by providing a platform for the voices and the issues that you really need to hear about and that should be central to these talks. And so I'm proud and delighted to say that we've got three such voices, absolutely crucial on this issue, to talk to us today about this issue of representation and the need for new forums, the need for new ways of engaging and getting the attention, the political attention, which frontline communities need, which marginalized communities need, which the people who are not being heard in the COP conference just over there need to have. And so I'm very pleased to introduce Eva Sow Ebion from Global Assembly, based in, originating in Senegal, Joseph Sikulu from Tonga, and Nicki Becker from Argentina. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Now, it's one of the conventions of this show, Monbiosis, that I don't introduce you, I ask you to introduce yourselves. So perhaps, Eva, you could start us off by telling us about yourself and your work.
Thank you so much, George. Really happy to be joining you this morning. My name is Eva. I'm based in Dakar, Senegal. I'm the co-founder of the Innovation for Policy Foundation and part of the delivery core team of the Global Assembly. The Global Assembly, it's all about bringing a new infrastructure and a new platform, thinking that it's crucial for everybody to get a seat at the global governance table. So we have been running a very long process with different components to bring communities from around the world to be able to learn and to deliberate on the climate and ecological crisis.
Thank you very much. And Joseph, you're here at COP, aren't you, representing some of the Pacific Islands, which are in very serious trouble. Tell me about your work and what you're doing here.
Thank you, George. Yes, so I'm with an organization called 350.org, which is a climate change advocacy group. We're based out in the Pacific, so we're 350 Pacific. We're also known as the Pacific Climate Warriors, and we work with young Pacific people on island and also in the diaspora, just to ensure that they have the tools and resources they need to be able to stand up within spaces like this and claim their own narrative, and to be able to show up with confidence and also just take space. And so we're here a representation of Pacific youth. Our numbers are small, but we're trying to be as impactful as we can.
And Nicki, you're a 19-year-old activist from Argentina. Tell me about your work, what you're trying to achieve, what you want to see happening worldwide.
Oh, lot of things. Yeah, I'm a climate activist from Argentina. I'm part of Jovenes por el Clima Argentina, that the translation is Youth for Climate Argentina, one of the expression of Friday for Future in my country. And I'm also very active in Friday for Future, and especially in Friday for Future MAPA, that means most affected people and areas. And what we demand is climate justice. And that means, for example, what you already said, that being having a real voice inside the COP, and that is not happening really.
Now, Eva, one of the things which strikes me about these meetings, this is the 26th now. They've failed at least 24 times so far. There's been a sort of partial success in Paris. Usually, when something keeps failing, you try to do it differently, but it's the same old, same old. Why do they seem so locked into a model which doesn't seem to be working?
That's a very great question. And I think if we really want any model to be global, that means that we need to break down it at the local level. And so far, of course, there is this gap between the leaders, between the governments, between the institutions that have been included into the debate, and all the communities that are affected about the climate and ecological crisis. So it was really the time to came up with a bottom-up approach, not having this top-down model where the policy, the decision are only made by the leaders, but where we could see the voice of the people that are truly facing in their everyday life the climate crisis, but at the same time doesn't know what it is about and how they could fight it or involve their community in understanding more the topics. So I think it's a matter of learning, because a lot of people around the globe just don't have the capacity to have access and to understand the different evidence that exists, but also to apply it at a local level, understanding what it means in those people's life, how those people are affected, and how they can, at their community level, being able to take action and to engage with their local leaders.
So Eva, if you were to be given the presidency of the talks and you had total power to decide how they should be run, what would you do differently? How would these talks operate?
So firstly, I will make sure that we have a decentralized model. What we have been trying to the Global Assembly is to open a call to all the community organizations from around the world. And why is because we know how much community organizers have been at the heart, finally, of bringing response and solution to people. And people very naturally, spontaneously organize themselves already within those communities. So I will make sure that those community organizers get a chance, firstly, as I mentioned earlier, to have access to knowledge that is completely understandable for everyone, whether you are literate or not. I will also make sure that we are using a language, and in this sense, everything that we see mostly are most of the time in English. And we have been trying to bring this community organizer to have the role in translating all of this evidence, in translating people contribution, in making sure that those people have also a companion that can bring their voice, whether it is in English, and make sure that it's a part of this big platform. So I will take that decentralized model, make sure that everybody can be a part of it. And that's exactly what we have been trying to do with the Global Assembly, knowing that it's the first time that the sortition was run at a global level, so that we can come up with this snapshot of the human family representing and based on the demographic of the people on the earth, and make sure that they are building empathy with other people that are also affected, with other people that maybe knows more about the topic, and at another level, create this safe space where they can express themselves and deliberate. And he has been quite incredible. I need to say that it's more than 170 organizations from around the world that have been organized themselves through different language clusters to make sure that everybody can contribute meaningfully. And all of these more than 100 organizations have also been part of defining what the model is. So it was not bringing a model that was already finished, but co-create a model of deliberation together with the citizens, together with the institution, with the experts of climate and ecological crisis. And I think it's really incredible to see how these people from different backgrounds have been co-creating a declaration and what they call the People Declaration for a Sustainable Future of Planet Earth, which is quite beautiful.
Thank you, Eva, for that very inspiring description there. Joseph, in the meantime, we have to work with what is basically a dysfunctional system, don't we? The existing COP process. And there's been a lot of talk about the lack of leadership there, but it seems to me there is leadership. It's just not coming from the big polluting nations such as the UK, but it's coming from nations such as your own. Tell me something about the efforts of the most affected peoples to actually do what the big polluting nations are not doing.
Yeah, so it definitely is within the negotiations, the most vulnerable nations who are leading within the negotiations. And it's because they have everything to lose. And so they go into them fighting for their survival. One of the hardest things, though, for a lot of for the low emitting nations, for vulnerable countries, is that we're coming into a COP that is filled with fossil fuel lobbyists. There's over 500 fossil fuel lobbyists within the COP this year. For every one Pacific negotiator, there are 12 fossil fuel lobbyists. And so it's an uphill battle, which makes it really difficult to try and negotiate. The other thing that I guess Eva really hit the nail on the head with is a language. And so the UNFCCC, the COP statement, it's all about language. And all of these structures have been created in order to continue to oppress, especially people whose language isn't English, whose first language isn't English, because all of these things are on battle for the smallest words. But the reality is, it is the countries like the High Ambition Coalition, the CVF, AOSIS, all of these coordinating bodies of small island developing states, vulnerable nations coming together to push for higher ambition. And that's been great to see. They're the leaders who are holding the line in these next 2 days, and we should do whatever we can to support them.
Now, Nicki, for the great majority of people concerned about climate breakdown, for all the reasons we've been discussing, we don't have direct access to government. Can you assure people that there is a link between protest movements, global citizens movements, and actual policy change? Does it reach the ears of government?
Yeah, for sure. What I'm sure is that the only way to stop the climate crisis is with collective action, and that's what youth over the world are doing, demanding on the streets. If you ask me, for me, the most important moment during this COP was on Friday and on Saturday on the strike, because it was the only moment that I see hope. Because for me, hope, it doesn't have to be an empty word that some people use it because it sounds great. For me, hope it has to be full of action, and I only see in real action there, for example, on the strike, or meeting more young people, or more communities, or more people from all over the world that are demanding for the same thing. And I'm very worried about what is happening, for example, now with the Article 6, that they want to take out the word human rights, because basically, how can we include more people in the conversation is trying to communicate that the climate crisis is a human right issue, because if the people understand that connection, I'm sure that we will have more people inside our movement. And I think it's very bad what is happening with the Article 6, because they want to take out this word, and that means that we can reduce emissions, but without taking care about human rights. And that's something that it's very, very bad, and that we should be all seeing that.
Now, to stay with you for a moment, Nicki, I mean, we're facing, I think it's fair to say, the greatest crisis humanity has ever faced, isn't it? It's the potential collapse of our life support systems. And so that means we need the biggest mass movements that humanity has ever mustered. How do we raise this movement by 10 times, by 100 times, which I think is where it needs to be?
Yeah, I think that, of course, I don't have the answer, but what I think is that we are failing in how to communicate the climate crisis sometimes. Because, for example, I'm from Argentina again, and I hear a lot of people from Argentina saying, why should I care about the climate crisis? If, for example, in my country, we have an economical crisis. And the thing is that we can't understand the climate crisis separately from other crises. For example, the economic, for example, I don't know, or separate for gender or whatever. So I think we should try, when we communicate about the climate crisis, we should try to change the narrative, because some of the people still think that the climate crisis is something that is going to happen in the future. So why should I care about the climate crisis if I have a problem in the present? So I think connecting all the issues that the people has in their daily life, and also connecting all the time with human rights, it's something that is very important to change this perspective, or this picture of that the climate crisis is a polar bear, because the climate crisis is not just a polar bear. And if we communicate like that, for example, if you look climate change in Google, you will find polar bear, and that it's very obvious that what is happening. I mean, what I think is that we should change the narrative, and then more people will join the movement.
Now, Eva, we've heard from the three of you about the dysfunctions of the current system, the way it needs to change. what you have described so far, Eva, in your previous answer, it sounds like the roots of a kind of global democracy.
Completely. It's just a new way of participatory and deliberative process. And I think what I really see, it's three main components that are necessary for things to change and for change to happen, and it needs to happen now. And everybody needs to be at that table, need to take action for that to happen. Otherwise, we won't be able to do it. And it's interesting because what we see is the greatest ideas in terms of policy, in terms of action, comes from the community. It comes from the citizens themselves. So this way of having a new decision-making infrastructure allow all of these people to be able just to express themselves. And it's also a matter of bringing back the citizens and the people at the center, at the heart of any decision that is taken. And that means trust simply in people and in them having the right answers. And I agree with Nicki and Joseph when they're saying that common challenges need common solution. It's only by the collective action and the collective global solution that we will be able to face that. And also, how do we build empathy between the people? Because we are sometimes quite biased by our background, by the different advantage or disadvantage based on where we are on the globe, and building empathy within the people in how can we better communicate and make sure that we have these fundamental common ground in understanding how people are affected and how do we answer to that. And three ways that we have been using to do this. Firstly is through the core assembly, which is really about bringing an open framework of new and deliberative democracy. When these people are chosen by a sortition, that's mean by lottery, and they are also bringing voice of other people that living in their location. Those people have been deliberating for a long time. We have tried to sandwich COP in a way so they are able to look at the deliberation and the negotiation that was happened at COP. For a lot of them, it was the first time, but also quite aware that 100 people cannot be enough representatives. So we have been developing what we call the community assembly to just allow anyone to bring his own narrative on how he's affected about climate changes. And this is crucial in a sense where the evidence that we have at the moment doesn't speak to everybody, but if people are able to bring their own narrative and their own evidence and link it to the global warming, then it makes it more simple for everybody to get access to it. And then I just wanted to bring another part, which is really interesting in understanding how can the creative community from around the world play a central role in having everybody to be able to understand and to express themselves. So we have been launching what we call the cultural wave and having artists from around the world that are taking those evidence and translating them in more accessible content for everybody through poems, through videos, through songs, to understand and to share how they are affected and which response and solution they are bringing to the table.
Fantastic, thank you. So Joseph, what we're really talking about is reversing colonial power relations.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to begin by empowering our people on the ground to be able to tell their stories. That's going to be the biggest way to be able to build a coalition of people on the ground, is ensuring that people have everything they need in order to be able to show up to the conversation. Storytelling has always been a big part of our work. And when we talk about storytelling, we talk about storytelling as a form of resistance, because a lot of our people have for the longest time not had the space or the tools or not felt the power to be able to stand up and tell their story. And that's what's missing within these negotiations, is more voices from the people on the ground in the front lines. And I guess in order to get to where we need to really break down that structure that has oppressed a lot of people and felt them and made them feel like they have had no voice within this space. And that starts by empowering people to be able to tell their story.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Joseph. Tell me a story of what a better world looks like.
A better world looks like one where we don't have to worry about where our kids will be next year, or if our house will be standing in the next cyclone season. It's a story where I can today still know that I will be an ancestor for somebody tomorrow who's going to be able to walk on our islands and feed from our oceans and raise their kids and sing our songs and make our clothes and weave from our plants. And it's a world where our people can continue to thrive in the way that we have for thousands of years. And that's why we are here, because we want for our future generations what we have today, but it's also exactly what we hope we are standing to lose.
Yes. Nicki, tell me a story from your perspective of the world that you want to inherit when you get to my age or even older. What would you like that world to look like?
Definitely what Joseph said about not having to be worried about my present and what my future will look like. And having, of course, I think what I said before, because when we talk about the climate crisis, we are talking about social justice, because there is no climate justice without social justice. So definitely, I can imagine. When I imagine a better world, I imagine a world where human rights are at the center, where we don't have to worry about our right to live in a healthy world, living in a world that we can breathe. Because, for example, in my country, it's not fires everywhere. In Argentina, just last year, more than 1 million hectares of forest and land were burned because of the climate crisis. So definitely, this is not the future that I like. And the future that I like is a future where human rights are at the center, and that the climate crisis is not a problem anymore.
Thank you very much. That's beautifully expressed. And Eva, so to these new stories, which Nicki and Joseph have told us, which I'm sure you endorse, justice is absolutely at the heart of it, isn't it? And participatory, deliberative democracy, that helps us to get a long way along that track.
Completely, that's what I believe. Deliberative process and participatory process more ever are really how we will get to there. African, based on the continent, I know how much my community here, people that are living in Senegal, people that are living in Sudan, within the Sahel, people that are living in the DRC are really affected by all of these crises. And I think when we look at it in terms of justice, we know how much the African continent, for instance, is really minor in how they are raising this crisis. But at the same time, there are those that are the most affected. So of course, justice is at the heart of how do we make sure that we address the crisis in a meaningfully way. And for me, that's mean in a fair way. And through actually the Global Assembly, just to share about the framing question on which the citizens have been deliberating is how can humanity address the climate and the ecological crisis in a fair and effective way. Unless we address fairness and how can everybody can be put at the same level in terms of how people are affected, but also how people have access to maybe funding to support the different action that they are undertaken to fight climate and ecological crisis, we won't be looking at climate justice in the right way. So let's see how the disadvantaged community, let's see how the minority finally, which are those that are not finally aware. Just to share a little story, through the development of facilitation card to conduct conversation around the climate and the ecological crisis, we ran some interviews with people. And I had the chance to meet here with a fisherman, live in the coast in Senegal, Jaga. And Jaga is not literate, but he has been fishing for the last 25 years. And he was just expressing how much he had seen the seas getting higher, how much it was difficult for him. He was not fishing away, that he decreased his revenue. But Jaga never had the chance to just be able to know what the climate crisis is. And he has no awareness of what the government maybe in Senegal is doing to do that. So I think bring that people in understanding that justice is also about who are the people that are the most affected, and how today can the power in place provide enough support for those people to have access to knowledge, because learning is again at the heart of them taking action, and secondly to support what they are doing at their little level and bring that at scale for that to have a meaningful impact.
And Joseph, how do we persuade the UN to change its process? You know, this evidently broken process, this evidently exclusive process. How do we bring in some of the amazing thinking I've been hearing from the three of you into the most important negotiations on Earth?
It's a good question. I think one that a lot of people like the answer to too. But I think the differences come within the way civil society show up. And civil society plays such an important role within the UN in terms of accountability. And so people both inside and outside of COP need to be singing the same song and singing the same song, that the system is broken and we need to shift that. And that's the role we can all play, whether we're here or whether we're at home. We have to continue to call for a reformation of the system. And COP only goes for 2 weeks, but the whole year is 52 years. And it's something that we have to continue to do outside of this. We can't just be singing this song while we're at COP today. We have to do it next week and the week after. And so it will come down to people power movement in order to shift the mood, in order to shift the structure. And we need to do that.
Yeah. And talking of people power, Nicki, we're constantly told by the politicians at COP, we're doing this for our children, we're doing this for our grandchildren. And yet, where are the young people in this process? Surely, if they were to be doing it for the children, for the young people, they're doing it with the young people.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny that the fossil fuel industry has a seat at the table into the negotiations, but young people couldn't go in, just listen what is going on there. And in this COP, it's very difficult to understand what is happening in the negotiations. And I think it's terrible, basically, because they can't decide about our present and about our future without us, without the voices of young people who are suffering and who will suffer and who will have to deal with the consequences of this crisis that we didn't decide anything, basically.
Well, thank you very much, all of you. That was absolutely fantastic discussion. Nicki, Eva, Joseph, really, you've knocked it out of the park. So I can't thank you enough for the honor and privilege of talking to you. So yeah, please carry on watching cop26.tv. Look out for future episodes of Monbiosis. Have a look at the old ones. There's an archive of all the ones we've so far made. cop26tv/Monbiosis, not hard to find. Thank you again to my wonderful guests. Stay with us. Bye-bye.